Okay, at the starting point of chapter 7, we're to look into market structure and how to measure it. Okay, so market structure has several dimensions. One is the number of firms competing in an industry, relative size of firms, namely the concentration of this industry, technological and cost conditions, demand conditions, and ease of firm exit or entry. Namely, is there any barrier to entry or not? Okay, that the last one decides how dynamic this industry can be. Number of firms, easy to observe. Technological and cost conditions that's determined by the feature of the industry itself, observable. Demand conditions measured by elasticity of consumers. The more elastic it is, it indicates that the consumer has more alternatives. They're more sensitive to price change. If the price change a little, they're going to reduce their quantity consumed by a lot because they have other alternatives to go to. Ease of firm entry or exit, that is also easily observable. So the one that remains a little bit task for us to solve is to measure the concentration of firms. So here it is. So industry concentration, in order to measure that, we need to measure the size distribution of firms within an industry. Namely, are there many small firms, or is the industry led by a few large firms? Talking about many small firms, you can think about, gas stations, small gas stations, they're everywhere. Thinking about an industry that is led by few large firms. Think about technological industry, right? Like operating system of phones, Android and Google, they are the two leading heads. So how do we measure that? We're introducing two indices. The first one is titled as, it's called 4-firm concentration ratio. So we are taking the 4 leading firm, their sales or their size, and we calculate the sum, and we calculate its proportion as the size of the total firm. So S stands for size or sales, S for the total industry. So if the 4 leading firm, those are the biggest firms in this industry, still takes a very small proportion of the entire industry, right? Then this C4 4-firm concentration ratio will be close to 0. The closer this ratio is to 0 means the more competitive this industry is. Think about gas station. We are just looking at specific gas station. We are just picking 4 gas stations on the main street. We take their sales as a proportion of the total sales of gas, say in Utah, in the entire state of Utah, or in the entire United States, then we can see, the value is very small for C4. Then it demonstrates that this industry is pretty competitive. The second index is called Herfindahl-Hirschman index, HHI index. It is calculated by multiplying 100 or 10,000 to the sum of the squared term, and what is squared here? That is the weight of each firm out of the total market share, of the total market scale. Okay, I'll give you an example later on. And this HHI index lies between 0 and 100, with higher numbers indicating more concentration. Okay. The higher it is, it means the industry is led. The majority of the industry is captured by few leading firms. Let's look at 2 examples. One is the example of the C4 4-firm concentration ratio. So here, suppose the industry is composed of 6 firms. 4 firms has sales of $10 each, and 2 firms have sales of 5 each, what is the 4-firm concentration ratio for this industry? The 4 leading firms are those. Numerator is then 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10, which is 40. And then we need to calculate the denominator, which is the size of the total firm. That is just this 40 plus the remaining 2 firms, which are 5 each, so 5 plus 5. So the total size of industry is 50. And here the 4-firm concentration ratio is 40 over 50, which is 0.8. And its interpretation is to say the 4 largest firm in the industry captures 80% of the total industry output, which is pretty high. So this industry is more concentrated. As we say more concentrated, that means the industry is closer to monopoly. And as we say the industry is less concentrated, we say this industry is closer to a perfectly competitive market, where we have many firms and each firm is very small. So let's look at the HHI index example. For an industry that composes 3 firms, 2 firms have sales of 10 each, and the remaining firm has sales of 30. What is the HHI index for this industry? First, we need to calculate the total size of the entire industry, which is 10 by 2 plus 30. That is 50. So that is the total size. And then we have to calculate the weight. That's why it's W. The weight or the proportion, the market share of each firm. So the third firm, which is larger, it has a larger market share, which is 30 over 50. The other smaller firms, which are equal sized, each of them has 10 out of 50 as their weight. So the HHI index is 10,000 multiplied by the summation of the square of the weight for each. The square of the weight for the first one, the squared of the weight of the second one, the squared of the weight for the third one, and in the total is 4,400. Not very close to 10,000. So there is some level of concentration, but not an extreme level of concentration. Okay, so here are some example of C4 and HHI. So HHI is closer to 0, meaning this industry is less concentrated. Like here, C4 index is close to 0 and HHI is close to 0. That means there are many furniture producers. And this furniture market is more like a competitive market. But look at certain big ones, like motor vehicles. HHI is pretty big, it's bigger. C4 is big. That indicates motor vehicles is dominated by big brands, Toyota, Honda, Ford, GM. Here are some limitation of concentration measures. So factors that impact and limit industry concentration measures include, one thing is we don't consider global markets. And the second is national, regional, and local markets are all treated as national markets. And industry, there is no detailed understanding. There is no detailed sectioning between these different levels, provincial levels. The third one is industry definition and product classes, when defined broadly, understate concentration compared to more narrowly defined product classes. Sometimes it's kind of disputable if you're looking into, say, if you're looking into the concentration level of gasoline product, but people may argue, hey, diesel is a close substitute to gasoline. Should we also consider that? Right? The range of the market is sometimes disputable as well.